When a devoted father and his twin daughters died on the same day, it shattered a small town. But what happened at their funeral revealed a chilling mistake that no one saw coming. Ravi was not a rich man, but he had a heart full of love and hands that never stopped working. He lived in a small town with narrow lanes and simple people where everyone knew each other. His life was not easy, but he carried a smile that made others feel calm. The story started many years ago when he fell in love with a woman named Sunita. She was soft-spoken and kind, with a smile that lit up Ravi's world. They got married, and after a few years they were expecting their first child, but life can be cruel sometimes. Sunita gave birth to not one, but two beautiful twin girls, Mira and Neha. However, her body could not take the pain and blood loss. She died a few hours after childbirth. That day, Ravi became both a father and a widow. He held the tiny girls in his arms and cried silently. He didn't know how to raise children, and he didn't know how to live without his wife. But he promised her, through his tears, that he would take care of their daughters with every breath he had. Years passed. Ravi never remarried. Many people advised him to find a new partner for his own support and the girls' upbringing, but he refused. "No one can take Sunita's place," he always said. Instead of searching for a new life, he built his entire world around his daughters. He worked as a clerk in a small government office, often taking up odd jobs in the evenings. To earn extra money, every rupee he saved was for Mira and Neha. The twins grew up watching their father cook, clean, and manage everything at home. He would braid their hair before school, iron their uniforms, and help them with homework in the evenings. When they were sick, he stayed up all night placing cold cloths on their heads. He learned how to cook their favorite food, even though he was not a great cook. Every birthday, he would save up to buy them matching dresses and a small cake, sometimes with just a single candle to share. The three of them became more than a family. They were a team. Mira was the older twin by 5 minutes. She was bold, curious, and always the first to ask questions. Neha was softer, more thoughtful, and always worried about others. Though they looked alike, their personalities were different. But one thing was common: they both loved their father more than anything. While other girls their age talked about their mothers, Mira and Neha proudly spoke about their papa as the man who raised them alone and never complained. Ravi's routine was simple. He would wake up early, make breakfast, drop the girls at school, go to work, come home, cook dinner, and help them study. He rarely bought anything for himself. His shirt collars were often worn out, his shoes had small tears, and his watch had a cracked glass. But his daughters always had clean uniforms, good books, and everything they needed to study well. As they entered their teenage years, life became a little easier. Mira and Neha were now helping with chores, cooking occasionally, and managing their time. Ravi finally had a little more rest in the evenings. He would often sit on the porch with a cup of tea, watching them laugh or tease each other inside the house. Sometimes he would imagine what Sunita would have said if she had seen their daughters. He missed her, especially during quiet moments. The girls were bright students. They did well in school and won small prizes for speeches, debates, and science projects. Their teachers admired their discipline and respectfulness. Ravi attended every parent-teacher meeting, even if he had to skip work. He felt proud when the teachers praised his daughters. Those moments were his rewards, his medals. His bonus, when they finished high school, they both got admission into a college in the nearby city. Ravi was nervous. The thought of his girls living away from home scared him, but he knew education was important. He found a small girls' hostel near the college and visited it himself to make sure it was safe. He traveled with them on their first day, helped them settle in, and cried quietly when he returned home alone. The house became silent. For the first time in 19 years, he ate dinner alone. He left the girls' room untouched, as if they would walk in at any moment. But he stayed strong. He called them every day, sometimes twice, sent money for their needs, and smiled whenever they sent him pictures. The girls missed him too, but they were happy to be learning new things and chasing dreams their father had nurtured for them, their bond grew even stronger during those college years. Every Sunday, they would video call him. Sometimes they laughed for hours. They would tell him stories about college, friends, and professors. And every birthday, they made sure they came home, no matter how busy they were. Ravi would decorate the house with small lights, cook their favorite meals, and wait by the gate with joy in his eyes. Ravi's 50th birthday was approaching. The girls were planning a surprise for him. They'd secretly saved money from their part-time tutoring jobs. They wanted to buy him a new watch, a good one, because he had been wearing the same broken one for years. They also planned to take him out for dinner, his first real restaurant meal in a long time. They spoke to one of Ravi's close friends and told him to keep the plans secret. On the morning of his birthday, Ravi woke up feeling excited. He had no idea what the girls were planning, but they had told him they were coming home for lunch. Cleaned the house early, took a bath, and even wore a crisp shirt the girls had gifted him last year. He looked at Sunita's photo, smiled, and whispered, "Your daughters are coming." Meanwhile, the girls were already on the way to meet him. They had finished their morning classes and were crossing the main road near the college to catch a cab, when a large truck suddenly lost control and crashed through the barrier. Screams followed. The street became chaotic. People ran, some froze, and others dialed emergency numbers. Among the injured were Mira and Nia, both unconscious, both with severe injuries. They were taken to the hospital, but it was too late. At the same time, Ravi was on the highway, driving his old scooter to pick them up halfway. He had bought sweets and flowers from a roadside shop. But that same morning, a speeding car coming from the opposite direction lost control on the wet road and rammed into a truck. The truck in turn struck Ravi's scooter. He too was rushed to the hospital, but by the time help arrived, he was already gone. 3 lives. 1 family, 1 day. Back in town, people started receiving calls. Neighbors ran to Ravi's house, trying to process the news. No one could believe it. How could all 3 of them die on the same day, in different places, within hours of each other? It felt like a nightmare, a cruel joke played by fate. The town, which was preparing to wish Ravi a happy birthday, is now preparing to receive 3 bodies for a funeral. Ravi's best friend, Mr. Ghosh, took charge. He contacted the hospital, identified the bodies, and began making arrangements. The entire town offered help. Some brought flowers, some helped clean the house, some offered money for the funeral. People cried openly, even those who had not spoken to Ravi for years. Everyone remembered his kindness, his simplicity, his love for his daughters. The school teachers arrived with tears, the college principals sent condolences, and even the local shopkeepers closed their shops in his honor. The house that once echoed with laughter now stood silent. The birthday decorations Mira and Neha had planned were found inside their bags. The watch they had bought for him was still wrapped in a box, never opened. Ravi never got to wear it. The 3 were to be cremated together, side by side, just as they had lived always together. But just when the family thought the worst was over, something unexpected happened. Something that no one saw coming. Something that would turn their sorrow into shock. The day began just like any other, with the usual sounds of birds, the faint smell of rain in the air, and people rushing to their morning routines. But for Ravi and his daughters, this day held a different kind of excitement. It was Ravi's 50th birthday, and though he had never made a big deal about birthdays before, this one felt special. He didn't know that Mira and Neha were planning a small surprise for him. He only knew that they were coming home to have lunch with him. And that thought alone made his heart feel light. He woke up early, just as he always did, and made tea while humming a soft tune. He cleaned the porch, watered the plants Sunita had once planted, and carefully laid out clean clothes. He'd even shaved, something he rarely did, except on festivals or important days. In the mirror, he looked older than he remembered, with deep lines on his face and gray in his hair, but his eyes had a glow. His daughters were coming home. He had spoken to Mira on the phone the night before. She told him, "Papa, don't cook tomorrow. We are coming early, and don't ask questions. Just wait." Ravi had laughed and said, "Okay, okay, but at least tell me what you're bringing." But she didn't answer. Nia had sent him a laughing voice note saying, "Just wait, Papa. You'll love it." In the city, Mira and Nia were also excited. They had finished their early classes and were heading out together. They had carefully packed the watch they bought for their father, a sleek black one, with a silver dial and silver leather strap. They'd saved money for 3 months to buy it. In the other bag, they had his favorite sweets from a small shop he liked. They laughed as they walked toward the main road. Their plan was to take a cab and meet Ravi at the halfway point so they could all come home together. As they reached the street and waited for the traffic light to change, they were still talking. Neha was checking her phone, and Mira was looking at something across the road. The light turned green, and they started walking. A truck, coming from the left, was moving too fast. The road was wet from the night's rain, and the driver lost control while trying to brake. The truck skidded, hitting a divider, and then suddenly turned toward the pedestrian crossing toward. Mira and Neha, witnesses later, said they didn't even hear the truck's horn. Everything happened in just a few seconds. There was a loud crash, screams from people nearby, and then silence. When people rushed to the scene, they found the twins lying on the road, unconscious and bleeding. A few good people immediately called an ambulance and tried to help. Both girls still had a weak pulse, and they were quickly taken to the nearest hospital at the same time. Far away, Ravi was on his way to meet them. He had taken a shortcut through the highway to reach the agreed spot. On his scooter, he was carrying a small flower bouquet, a box of sweets, and a smile. He didn't know what surprise the girls had planned, but he was happy. The road was not too busy that morning, but it was slippery. A large car ahead of him suddenly tried to overtake another vehicle and swerved into the wrong lane. Speeding truck, unable to stop in time, collided with the car and lost balance. The truck tilted and slid, crashing directly into Ravi's path. The crash was loud and violent. Ravi was thrown several feet from his scooter. People rushed to help, and an ambulance was called. But like the twins, Ravi was also unconscious when they found him. He was breathing, but weakly. He was taken to a hospital, unfortunately. The same hospital where Mira and Neha had been taken just a little earlier. Back at the hospital, the emergency room was a scene of chaos. Doctors and nurses worked quickly. 2 young women with severe head and chest injuries, and an older man with multiple fractures and internal bleeding. Blood bags were being rushed in, machines beeped continuously, and doctors were shouting instructions. No one yet realized that the 3 patients in front of them were father and daughters. Mira was the first to be declared dead. Her heart had stopped minutes after arriving, and doctors were unable to revive her. Nia's condition was slightly more stable, and she was rushed into surgery. She was fighting, holding on. Meanwhile, Ravi was in the trauma ward, unconscious and bleeding internally. Doctors tried to stabilize him, but his body was too weak. He took his last breath during an X-ray scan, just minutes after Mira had passed. And then, while doctors were trying their best to save Neha in the operating room, her heart also gave up. The young surgeon who tried to bring her back cried silently as she called the time of death. 3 deaths, all connected, all within the same hour, when the hospital staff finally checked their identification cards and emergency contacts. The reality hit them like a storm. Mira and Neha were twin sisters. Ravi was their father, and all 3 had been brought in separately on the same day. At different times, from different accidents, and none had survived. The hospital manager immediately called the local police, and then began to try contacting the family. Ravi's phone was with him, but it was damaged in the crash. The girls' phones were also partly broken. After some struggle, the staff managed to call a number listed under Uncle and Mira's phone. That man was Ravi's childhood friend, Mr. Ghosh. Mr. Ghosh was at work when he received the call. At first he didn't understand what the hospital was saying. 3 accidents. All dead? It didn't make sense. He thought it was a mistake. Maybe they had confused some names. But when the hospital insisted, he rushed there immediately. When he arrived and saw their faces covered in white sheets in the mortuary, he collapsed in shock. The doctors confirmed the time and reason of death for each of them. It was real. It had happened. Back in the town, people were getting ready to visit Ravi's house with birthday wishes. Some neighbors were baking a small cake. But Mr. Gosh's phone call changed everything. One of the neighbors, teacher from the girls' school, was the first to hear the news from him. She cried so loudly that others came running. Word spread fast. Ravi's home, which had always been full of warmth and laughter, was now filled with stunned silence and sobs. People couldn't believe it. Some refused to believe it. 3 deaths on the same day felt impossible. Within hours, the house was crowded. Old women cried quietly in corners. Men sat outside, shaking their heads in disbelief. Children who had played with the twins sat with teary eyes, trying to understand what had happened. Someone found the birthday card Nia had written and left. On Ravi's desk, it read, "Happy 50th, Papa. We love you more than life." That line broke even the strongest of hearts. Mr. Gosh returned from the city late that night with the bodies. He had made arrangements for the funeral to be held together. It seemed right after all. The 3 of them had lived their entire lives side by side. It was only fair they left the world the same way. As the funeral preparations began, the entire town joined in. Shopkeepers closed their stores early. The school declared a day of mourning. Even people from nearby towns came to offer their condolences. They remembered Ravi not just as a father, but as a man who gave his life to raise his daughters. They remembered Mira and Neha as bright, kind, and respectful girls who were full of dreams. But no one could stop asking the same question. Why did it have to happen this way? Why all 3? Why on the same day? Some said it was destiny. Some called it God's will. Others said maybe it was a cruel joke of fate. No answer made the pain any less. At the center of all this, Mr. Gosh tried to stay strong. He had lost his best friend and 2 girls he considered like daughters. But he knew he had to take care of everything now. He arranged for the coffins, the flowers, the rituals. He stood by the family like a pillar, even when his own heart was broken the day before the funeral. While checking the paperwork with the hospital staff, a nurse pulled him aside and whispered, "Sir, there's something you should know." She hesitated. Her face looked worried. "There's some confusion about one of the bodies." At first, Mr. Gosh thought she meant the paperwork was incomplete. But then she explained further. "One of the tags on the girl's body doesn't match the hospital ID. It might be a simple mistake, but we're trying to confirm identities again. Please don't worry. We're just double-checking everything." Mr. Gosh didn't say anything then, but the words stayed with him all night. On the morning of the funeral, a distant relative arrived at the last moment. He had just come from another state and insisted on seeing Mira before the final rituals. That decision would change everything. Because when they opened the casket to let him pay his last respects, he screamed, "That girl lying there was not Mira." After the horrifying news spread through the town, everyone was still in shock. It felt like the world had gone silent. People moved around Ravi's house like shadows, quietly helping with the funeral arrangements. No one spoke loudly. No one laughed. It was as if even the birds had stopped singing. The air was heavy and time seemed slower than usual. Ravi's home, once filled with love and joy, now had an emptiness that felt like a giant hole in everyone's heart. Family members, neighbors, school teachers, and college friends had all come together. Some came to help, others came to cry, and many came simply because they couldn't believe that Ravi and his daughters were really gone. Inside the house, Ravi's friend Mr. Gosh tried to keep everything organized. He had taken responsibility for all the arrangements, but it was not easy. Every time he saw Ravi's photograph or one of the girls' clothes, his chest felt tight. Still, he stayed strong, knowing that someone had to take care of the last. Goodbye! The 3 bodies had been brought from the hospital in sealed caskets and kept in the front room. The idea was to hold the final rituals and cremation together, just like the family had always been together in life and now together in death. Everything seemed in order until one final visitor arrived, and everything changed. He was an older man named Satish, Ravi's distant cousin from another town. He had taken a late-night train after hearing the news. He arrived just a few hours before the cremation was to begin. His face was pale, his eyes red from crying. As he entered the room and saw the 3 caskets, he became emotional. "I want to see Mira once," he said softly. Mr. Gosh nodded. He too wanted the family members to say their final goodbyes. A few people carefully opened the casket, labeled with Mira's name. But the moment Satish looked inside, he stepped back in confusion. His eyes widened and then he shouted, "This is not Mira? Who is this girl?" Everyone turned to him in shock. Someone said, "What are you saying? That's Mira's body." The hospital confirmed it. But Satish stood firm. "I know Mira. I've seen her grow up. This is not her. This girl doesn't even look like her." Now the room was filled with whispers and fear. Mr. Gosh came closer and looked carefully at the body. At first, everything seemed normal. The girl's face was bruised from the accident, but something did feel off. Her features were not quite the same. Her hands looked different. The birthmark Ravi used to talk about, the small mole near Mira's left ear, was missing. Suddenly, the calm turned to panic. One of the relatives shouted, "Check the others. Check Neha's body again." They opened Neha's casket. This time, there was no confusion. The face was familiar. The birthmark on her wrist was there, and her eyes, though lifeless, still carried the same shape. It was definitely Neha. But now everyone was asking the same question. If this is Neha, then who is the girl in Mira's casket? Mr. Gosh rushed to find the paperwork from the hospital. He checked the hospital ID tags, body tags, and death certificates. Everything said the girl was Mira, but Satish kept shaking his head. "This is wrong," he said. "This girl is not part of our family." One of the younger cousins, who had taken a few photos during hospital identification, pulled out his phone and zoomed in on the picture taken that day. And when compared side by side with the face in the casket, the difference became clearer. The girl in the hospital photo looked slightly different from the one lying in front of them now. Something had gone terribly wrong. Within minutes, confusion turned into chaos. People started asking questions. Did the hospital make a mistake? Did they switch the bodies? Where is Mira's real body? Mr. Gosh quickly called the hospital. He explained the situation, trying to stay calm. The hospital staff, already tired and short on people, seemed unsure. They promised to check and call back. But Mr. Gosh couldn't wait. He decided to go there himself with 2 others. The funeral had to be stopped. Until Mira's identity was confirmed, they couldn't go ahead with the cremation. Meanwhile, the priest, who had come to perform the rituals, sat silently. He had never seen anything like this. People around were trying to comfort each other, but fear had spread. The idea that someone else's body had been brought into their home was deeply disturbing. At the hospital, the situation was worse than expected. The mortuary was small, crowded, and poorly managed. The attendant on duty couldn't remember exactly who had brought which body. Some of the tags had been handwritten. The nurses checked the register again, and that's when the shocking truth started to appear. According to the mortuary log, there had been 2 female accident victims brought in on the same morning. One was Nia Sharma. The other was an unnamed woman from a different case. That woman had died in a separate accident and had no known relatives. Somehow, in the confusion, her body had been mistakenly tagged as Mira Sharma. The doctors were alerted immediately. A senior official from the hospital apologized and started checking their internal documents. It looked like Mira's real body had been placed in a different freezer, meant for unidentified bodies, and the other girl's body was wrongly handed over to Ravi's family. But that wasn't all. As the hospital tried to locate Mira's real body, another disturbing detail came up. The girl who was wrongly sent to Ravi's home was not just an unknown accident victim. She had been under police investigation. She was found near a highway with injuries that didn't match an accident. Her death was suspicious. She had marks on her wrists, and there were rumors she was linked to a local trafficking case. This changed everything. The hospital manager immediately contacted the police. A team arrived and took over the situation. They asked Mr. Gosh many questions. Why was this girl cremated with Mira's name? How did no one notice earlier? Mr. Gosh, heartbroken and confused, told them the truth, that they had trusted the hospital's identification and didn't know anything about the other The police sealed the hospital's mortuary for investigation. The media also got a hint of the incident, and by evening, few reporters had gathered outside the hospital gate asking questions. News started spreading: body mix-up at City Hospital, family receives wrong girl's body, trafficking, victim mistaken for college student. Back at Ravi's home, people were scared. Some elderly women started praying loudly. They said the spirits would be angry. Others worried that they had performed rituals for the wrong person. The priest refused to continue the ceremony until the truth was clear. Late in the evening, the hospital finally located Mira's real body. It was found in another mortuary building about 20 kilometers away, where unclaimed bodies were usually sent. It had been mistakenly transferred there due to a staff error. The body was still intact, preserved, and not yet cremated. The team brought it back carefully and handed it over to Mr. Gosh with deep apologies. When Mira's real body arrived home, people were silent again. This time there was no confusion. Her face, though damaged from the accident, was clearly hers. The birthmark was there. Her nose had the same small cut she once got as a child. Even her fingers were curled in the way she often kept them. Mr. Gosh cried when he saw her. He had seen Mira grow up, remembered her first day at school, the time she won a prize for her speech, the way she held Ravi's arm while walking, and now she lay still forever. The family then decided to perform the final rites again. Properly this time, with all three, Ravi, Neha, and now Mira together. They had to wait one more day because the rituals needed to be started fresh. The priest agreed and began the cleansing rituals for the home too, to remove the energy of the mistaken funeral. The wrong body, the unknown girl, was taken by the police for further investigation. Her identity remained a mystery, but her case opened a bigger problem. How could such a mistake happen? How could a girl involved in a crime case be sent to an innocent family? Was it just a hospital error, or was something more hidden? Mr. Gosh was now not only heartbroken, but angry. He went to the authorities and demanded action. "Our pain is already deep," he said, "but what happened here could happen to others too. This is not just carelessness. This is injustice." The news reached state officials, and soon a full inquiry was launched. The hospital was asked to change its body identification process, and several staff members were suspended. A committee was formed to make sure such confusion never happened again. But for Ravi's family and friends, no punishment, no apology, and no explanation could bring back what they had lost. Still, they found some peace knowing that Mira was finally home, and that she could be cremated with the love and respect she deserved in that final moment. As the flames rose and the three pyres burned side by side, people stood quietly, holding hands. They cried, they prayed, they remembered, and they promised that the memory of Ravi, Mira, and Neha would never be forgotten. The sun had already started rising when Mira's real body was finally brought home. The whole night had passed with tension, confusion, and pain. People were tired, both in body and mind, yet no one left. Everyone stayed, waiting for the truth, waiting to say their final goodbyes in peace. When Mira was finally there, her true self, everyone felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that they had found her, sorrow that she had to return home this way, silent, still, and wrapped. In white cloth, Mr. Gosh stood quietly near the gate as the ambulance arrived. His legs felt heavy, his heart numb, but he stayed strong. He welcomed Mira as if she were coming back from college again. He whispered, "You're home, Beta." A few women nearby cried softly. Some walked up and gently touched her forehead, a traditional sign of love and farewell. This time, everything had to be done again, from the beginning. The priest returned and said that the earlier rituals performed had to be undone and then redone properly. It was as if they had to erase the past 24 hours. Flowers were brought again. The holy fire was set again. The chants were recited again, but nothing felt the same. The earlier confusion had broken everyone's hearts even more. It was not just a funeral anymore. It had become a story of errors, mystery, and deep pain as people sat for the final prayers. Many of them couldn't stop thinking about the unknown girl who was mistakenly brought in Mira's name. Who was she? Why was her body found near the city's outer ring road? And why was her death listed as an accidental case if she had marks on her wrists? These thoughts kept returning to everyone's minds. What had started as a tragedy of a family had now turned into something darker. Later that day, after the cremation was finally done and the ashes were taken to the river, Mr. Gosh sat down with the police officer who was handling the body swap investigation. His name was Inspector Harsh, a calm, serious man in his early 40s. He had been watching everything quietly and respectfully. But now, with the unknown girl's body in police custody, his role had become much more serious. We suspect that the girl who was accidentally sent to your house wasn't just a traffic accident victim, the inspector said slowly. There are signs of something more, something criminal. Mr. Gosh frowned. You mean murder? Possibly, or trafficking? Her injuries don't match the description given by the hospital. She had bruises on her arms and rope marks on her wrists. Also, her body had no ID, no phone, and no bag. Her fingerprints are not in any public database, which means she may never have had proper documents. The word trafficking made Mr. Gosh feel sick. He looked around at Ravi's house, at the girl's picture still hanging on the wall, and imagined a girl like Mira being tortured or kidnapped. It made his skin crawl. How did this body even end up with us? He asked. The inspector sighed. We're investigating. But from what we've learned so far, her body was brought to the same hospital as Mira's within just 2 hours. There was another accident case that morning, and her body was mixed in with those victims because the hospital was overcrowded and understaffed. Someone messed up the tagging. Once the body was mistakenly marked as Mira Sharma, the paperwork followed that name. No one double-checked. Mr. Gosh was silent for a long time. Where did the girl actually come from? He asked finally. That's the part that's more troubling, the inspector replied. She was found near an abandoned house on the outskirts of the city. Locals say the house was used by some suspicious people, maybe involved in illegal work. Her body had been placed in the backyard as if someone wanted it to be found. But no ID, no missing complaint, nothing. Mr. Gosh closed his eyes. The whole situation had gone far beyond what anyone had expected, from a painful accident to a funeral confusion, and now a hidden crime. And the fact that it got tied into the peaceful, hard-working life of Ravi and his daughters made it even more unfair. The inspector leaned in. We may need your help. You're the only person from the family who interacted with hospital staff and handled the identification process. We're going to open a formal investigation into this. Mr. Gosh agreed. I'll do anything. Please find out what really happened. That girl, she deserves justice too, whoever she was. In the days that followed, the town slowly began to return to normal. But something had changed. People still came to visit Ravi's home, leaving flowers, lighting candles, and talking about his kindness. Mira and Nia's college held a memorial where teachers and classmates cried openly, sharing stories of how the twins always stood together, how they smiled even during exam stress, and how they once helped a classmate secretly pay her fees. But, beneath all the sorrow and love, the mystery of the unknown girl stayed alive. Inspector Harsh and his team dug deeper into the abandoned house where the girl had been found. Inside, they discovered pieces of old ropes, food wrappers, and signs that someone had lived there recently. In the back room, they found a torn college ID half burned, with only a first name readable, Ria. They checked missing persons reports again. One of the constables found a match. A girl named Ria Saxena had gone missing 3 weeks earlier. She was from a nearby town and had not been seen since she took a bus to the city for a job interview. Her parents had filed a complaint, but the case had received little attention. The police contacted the parents and showed them the image of the unknown girl. The mother fainted instantly. It was her daughter. The mystery was solved, but it brought no peace. Ria had been kidnapped, possibly tortured, and then left to die. Her body was misidentified. Her final journey was mistaken for someone else's. The media, which had already heard about the funeral confusion, now jumped on the story. Shocking hospital error reveals trafficking victim, the headline said. Grieving family receives stranger's body, uncovers hidden crime. People across the state started questioning the hospital system. How could such a mistake happen? Why weren't bodies properly identified? How many more stories like Ria's were lost in the mess? Few social activists joined the fight. They demanded stronger identification rules, better record keeping, and quicker police action in missing girls' cases. Ravi's home, once just a quiet house in a small town, became a symbol of a bigger truth: how the system fails not just the dead, but the living who love them. Mr. Gosh became the quiet voice of that fight. He didn't speak much in public, but when he did, people listened. "I lost my best friend and his daughters," he once said at a gathering. "But in that loss, we also found a girl no one was looking for. That shouldn't have happened, not in a country that says it respects its daughters." In Ravi's house, the pictures of Mira and Neha were now framed with fresh flowers daily. The new watch they had bought for their father remained unopened. In a glass case, a small corner of the house had become a memory wall with school medals, childhood drawings, and photos of the three smiling together. Despite everything, Mr. Gosh found comfort in doing one last thing. He helped Ria's family hold a proper funeral. He arranged the flowers, called the priest, and even placed a small candle with her name in the corner next to Mira and Neha's pictures. "She came to us by mistake," he said softly, "but now she'll be remembered with them." In the months that followed, the hospital was restructured. A digital system was added to track and tag bodies. Fingerprint scanning became mandatory. Helpline was launched for missing persons, and 2 corrupt staff members were removed. Inspector Harsh's report was published in the local newspaper and called for stronger coordination between police and hospitals. But more than rules, what changed most was people's awareness. Families began double-checking things. Funeral homes became more careful. And somewhere, people started realizing how easily a silent girl like Ria could disappear unless someone cared enough to ask questions. For Ravi, Mira, and Nia, their story had ended too soon. But in their final goodbye, they had unknowingly saved someone else's story from being lost forever. And for those left behind, that truth became a quiet form of healing. After the final cremation of Ravi, Mira, and Neha was completed, silence returned to the house. The flowers had withered, the guests had left, and the candles had burned down to their last flickers. Only Mr. Gosh remained, sitting quietly on the old wooden chair where Ravi once liked to sip his evening tea. The home still smelled of incense and sadness. The wind moved gently through the empty rooms, spurring stories of a life that had once been full of laughter and love. For days, Mr. Gosh didn't speak much. He cleaned the house slowly, one room at a time. He folded the girls' clothes, carefully placing them in boxes, kept their books on the shelves, and dusted their trophies and certificates. Every corner of the house reminded him of them. Kitchen still held jars labeled in Mira's handwriting. Nia's guitar leaned quietly against the wall. Ravi's old pair of glasses lay on the table, untouched since the day he left. The town had returned to its routine, but everyone remembered what had happened. People still spoke about Ravi and his daughters in low, respectful voices. Children passing by the house would pause and look at the gate, as if expecting to see Mira or Neha waving at them like before. But the house remained silent, become a place of memory. Meanwhile, the story of the mistaken body and the girl named Ria had become national news. News channels played the footage of the funeral confusion, the hospital error, and the investigation that followed. Social media was flooded with posts about hospital negligence, missing girls, and the silent failures of the system. People were angry, heartbroken, and shocked. How could a simple mistake cause so much damage? And more importantly, how could a young girl like Ria disappear for weeks without anyone noticing? The government took notice. Health department officers visited the hospital for inspection. New rules were proposed. A body identification policy was passed that required photographs, fingerprint scans, and family verification before releasing any deceased person. Several hospitals across the region were ordered to upgrade their mortuary systems. What a separate team was created within the police force to handle all missing person reports. Involving women and girls, for Mr. Gosh, these actions were necessary, but they didn't bring peace. He had not only lost the people he loved most, but had also been pulled into a truth that was hard to accept. The system people trusted could fail them so easily still. Something inside him refused to stay silent. One morning, he woke up early and walked to the local school, the one Mira and Nia had attended. He met with the principal and said, "I want to do something in their memory. Not just flowers or a statue, something useful." But principal, who had also been a close friend of Ravi, nodded. "What are you thinking?" Mr. Ghosh replied, "A scholarship for girls, especially those from poor families. Every year, 2 girls will get full support for their education. One in Mira's name and one in Nia's." The school agreed immediately. With some donations from the community, and with help from a few local businessmen who respected Ravi, the scholarship fund was started. It was named the Maranaha Dream Fund. The first 2 girls who received it were both from underprivileged families. One wanted to be a doctor, the other a teacher. When they were given their certificates, Mr. Ghosh looked at them with tears in his eyes, whispered to himself, "Your dreams will live on through them." At the same time, Ria's family had finally gotten justice. With the help of Inspector Harsh, the police arrested 2 men who were connected to the abandoned house where Ria's body was found. They had a long history of involvement in illegal activities, but had managed to stay hidden because no one had reported them properly. But now, after media pressure and detailed investigation, they were caught. The court case was still ongoing. But Ria's parents finally felt that their daughter's death had not been ignored. They visited Reva's house to meet Mr. Ghosh. Ria's mother held his hands and said, "You didn't even know our daughter, yet you gave her the respect she never got in life. Thank you for treating her like your own," Mr. Ghosh replied softly. "She came to us in confusion, but maybe that was fate. She deserved love, even if it was in her final moments." Their bond became strong. Mr. Ghosh and Ria's family stayed in touch. On every death anniversary, they lit candles together for Ravi, Mira, Neha, and Ria. For flames, for lives, for stories that had become one. Even Inspector Harsh, who had once kept a formal distance, now visited regularly, said this: "Case changed the way I see my work, showed me how a single mistake can cause pain that lasts forever. But it also showed me how, even in sorrow, people can choose to do good." In one interview, when a journalist asked Mr. Ghosh how he managed to stay strong through so much pain, he replied, "I couldn't save them, but I can make sure their story saves someone else. That's how I keep going." He wrote down the whole story, every part of it, in a small notebook. From the day Ravi became a single father, to the way the twins grew up, to the accident, the funeral mistake, and Ria's discovery, every word was written with care. He planned to turn it into a book, not to earn money, but to make sure the world never forgot them. The book was published locally under the title 3 Goodbyes and One Silent Voice. It became popular in the nearby towns and cities. Readers cried when they read about the accident. They were shocked by the body mix-up. They felt pain reading about Ria, but they also found hope and how a tragedy created change. One part of the book read, "Sometimes the world breaks you in ways you never imagined. It takes away your home, your people, and your reason to smile. But sometimes, from that same broken place, something good grows. Not a replacement, not a miracle. A quiet seed of strength." That line stayed with readers long after they finished the book. In time, Ravi's house became a small memorial center. Mr. Ghosh opened it to the public once a month. Students came to learn about Mira and Neha. A photo wall was created. Handwritten letters were framed. Their childhood toys were placed in a glass box. And in the corner, a small photo of Ria sat beside them, not as a stranger anymore, but as one of them. People would sit quietly there, thinking about life, about fate, about mistakes that cost lives, about courage that kept others alive. Years passed, the story didn't disappear. It became part of the town's history. New parents told their children about the brave twins and their father. Teachers shared the tale in moral science classes. And those who read the book often came to the town just to see the house where it all happened. Mr. Ghosh grew older, but he never stopped telling their story. He would sit on that same wooden chair and talk to visitors. Sometimes he cried. Sometimes he smiled. but every time he made sure people left with more than just sympathy. He wanted them to leave with awareness, because somewhere in another hospital, another girl might go missing, another father might wait for a child who never returns, another family might cremate a stranger, and that thought gave him purpose. So, the story that began with tragedy did not end in darkness. It ended with truth, justice, and a promise that their lives and even their deaths would matter. They would not be remembered for how they died, but for what their story changed in the world, and that was enough to keep their memories alive forever.